The 1980s were the golden age of action figures, with new toy lines popping up seemingly constantly. While G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Masters of the Universe ruled the day, there's a lot of other lesser-known toy lines that just kind of slipped through the cracks. In this video, we're going to take a look back at some forgotten gems that I bet many of you forgot even existed. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt, often called Big Nerdy. Together, we are the NWO, the Nerd World Order, and this is Nerd. If it's your first time here on this channel, we try to step away from our responsibility as adults and talk about things like comics, cartoons, toys, nostalgia, anything you could think of from growing up that makes us just feel that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. I started this channel back during COVID in 2020, where I found myself unemployed, and it led to my wife and I actually opening our own action figure e-commerce store a year later, where we sell pretty much every modern action figure line you can imagine. Now, I might be a dealer of modern toys, but I know my history. The 1980s were incredible from a toy standpoint. Like, I was born in '83, so I didn't get to appreciate the entire thing, but I still got to feel a good part of it. We really had no idea how good we had it at that time. It was so good that a bunch of really cool toy lines that have gone, for at least many, forgotten to the annals of history. Am I using that word right? Annals of history? Anyway, it sounds dramatic. But a lot of toy lines have kind of just been forgotten, while others are like held in high esteem. Many of you are going to be like, I've never seen that. But that's okay, because the rest of you will be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like the member berries. Hey, you guys remember He-Man? Yeah, that was cool. How about John McClane? He was cool. Yeah, he used to climb through the glass. I remember that. Everyone loves member berries. This list is in no particular order, but we're going to count down from 10 for dramatic reasons, I guess. Number 10, Chuck Norris is Karate Commandos. The Chuck Norris Karate Commandos toy line was released by Kenner in 1986, and it was based on the short-lived animated series of the same name. The figures featured Chuck Norris, obviously, and his team of martial artists, along with their enemies from the villainous Vulture organization. Each figure had a karate action feature, which allowed them to perform various martial arts kicks and punches. The line also included vehicles and playsets because it was the 80s, it had to have those things, but much like the show, its run was brief. I think karate peaked in the 80s, isn't that right, Mr. Miyagi? Because the lifespan of this line was so short, it's actually pretty expensive to go back and buy them now. To pick up carded Karate Commandos, you're looking at around $70 a fig, but you can get the Lucy's for about 20 bucks. I kinda want that Karate Corvette, but he's even harder to find. Chuck Norris is indeed the man, though. This might be like where the man and the myth kind of mixed up. In fact, did you know that Chuck Norris has his own diary? It's called the Guinness Book of World Records. Death once had a near Chuck Norris experience. Chuck Norris doesn't breathe, he holds the air hostage. Chuck Norris's tears cure cancer. Too bad he never cries. Chuck Norris could strangle you with a cordless phone. Chuck Norris is the reason Waldo is hiding. The Swiss Army uses Chuck Norris knives. When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, it already had 3 missed calls from Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is a legend. Number 9, Rambo, Force of Freedom. The Rambo Force of Freedom toy line was produced by 𝐒𝐈𝐒𝐄 or 𝐒𝐈𝐒𝐄, I don't know, it's 𝐒𝐈𝐒𝐄, in 1986 and was based on the animated series inspired by the Rambo movies. The figures were highly detailed and larger than typical figures of that time, standing at about 6 inches. The line featured various versions of Rambo, obviously, and his allies, along with a range of villains and military-themed vehicles and accessories to just conveniently work out well with your G.I. Joes that were at their peak around this time. But the scale didn't work, so maybe they didn't think that through. Despite the show's short run, the toy line was incredibly popular for its time, and people really loved the rugged design and heavy emphasis on the action and weaponry. Buying these now can be really cheap if you don't care about the accessories, but even if you do, it's only around $25 for the common figures. Carded though, you're looking at $100 plus, so that's not so fun. And who would have guessed it, but 40 years later, we are still getting Rambo movies, except now the Punisher's in it, apparently. All because of some DB cop in Hope, Washington not letting him walk through town. That cop drew first blood, man. Coming in at number 8, Brave Star. One day a lawman appeared, with the powers of a hawk, wolf, puma, and bear. Protector of peace, mystic man from afar, champion of justice, Marshal Bravestar. How's that for a tagline? The Brave Star toy line, released by Mattel in 1986, was based on the sci-fi western animated series of the same name. The figures were larger than most in the 80s, even larger than the aforementioned Rambo 6-inch figures, as these came in at around 8 inches and featured characters like Marshal Bravestar, his allies, and villains from the desert planet of New Texas. The toys had action features like laser shooting and movable parts, as well as accessories like vehicles and the iconic robotic horse 3030. Despite the show's moderate success, the toy line did not last that long, but now it is a cult favorite among collectors. Even though Mattel chose to let this property sit and rot, we have gotten some modern incarnations from both Ramen Toys and Dassin Toys. Ramen Toys brought us the Marshal, and then Dassin Toys also brought us the Marshal. No, it was called the Sheriff then, not the Marshal. So, you know, copyright, legal stuff, but I mean, it says Brave Star on the damn box. I mean, just call him what he is at this point. As far as 80s toys go, Brave Star is among the more expensive to find nowadays, with the figures averaging around $50 a piece loose complete. At that price though, honestly, just go pay $100 and get ramens. Just don't be like me and forget to pre-order it for your store and then not have any. Oops, my bad. Coming in at number 7, Spiral Zone. The Spiral Zone toy line was produced by Tonka in 1987 and was based on the animated series about a dystopian future where an evil scientist controls much of the world with mind-controlling zone generators. These figures came with removable fabric clothing, helmets, and futuristic weaponry. The line featured both heroes from the Zone Riders and the villains led by the Overlord, very creative bad guy. Both the show and the toys had a unique, darker tone compared to other toy lines in the 80s, but despite their uniqueness, it was still very short-lived, and nowadays these are really sought after by collectors for their intricate design. I'll be honest, even after research, I have absolutely no memory of these, so everything I know about Zone Raiders is what I have learned. Maybe that's why I keep calling it Zone Raiders. Is it Zone Raiders or Zone Riders? I don't know. And I'm not gonna look. It's Zone Riders. Okay, good. Did you think Tonka just made trucks? Boom, you're wrong, apparently. This is largely based on a Japanese toy line by Bandai. Tonka had to actually pay to license it. Even now, the loose figures aren't that expensive to get your hands on. You can get them for about 20 to 30 bucks, but if you want all the accessories, you're gonna pay more. Notice a recurring theme on the accessories. No one saved them, my dog ate them. But then there's the vehicles, like the Rimfire Plasma Cannon and the Sledgehammer Battle Tank. Those are also going to set you back quite a bit. Coming in at number 6, Photon. The Photon toy line, released by LJN in 1986, was based on the live-action sci-fi TV series and the popular laser tag game of the same name. The action figures featured characters from the Photon Warriors and their alien enemies, with futuristic weapons and space gear. The line also included accessories and laser tag equipment that tied into the broader Photon gaming experience. That's right, not just a toy, an experience. Despite the innovative concept of combining toys with live-action show with tag, the line and the show had a pretty brief run before fading into obscurity. Every toy show I go to with my buddy Eric, guess what we're looking for? Photon. Guess what? Until I started hanging out with him, I had no memory of Photon. Now, I kind of know a little bit about it. I will say that we don't see very much of it at the retro toy shows we go to, but when we do see it, it can get pretty pricey. Especially if, no accessories this time, components. If the components work with those tag things and all the electronics, then they get pricey. Coming in at number 5, Inhumanoids. The Inhumanoids toy line, created by Hasbro in 1986, was based on the animated series of the same name, featuring monstrous creatures known as Inhumanoids that terrorize the Earth. The line included action figures from the heroic team known as the Earth Corps, not very creative, but we'll take it, as well as various Inhumanoid villains with names, now this is where we get unique, names like Decompose, Tendril, and Metlar. Those are good names. And then of course each figure had unique features and accessories. The figures were notable for their intricate and pretty grotesque details, which appealed to collectors despite the series' short run. Although the toy line didn't achieve any sort of lasting popularity, it has since gained a cult following. Shocker. In my honest opinion, of all the 80s toys that I'm talking about, these had some of the most unique designs, and from that design standpoint, I feel like they were really ahead of their time. The size on these was cool, as the smaller figures, like the small characters, were all around 5 or 6 inches, but the monsters, the Inhumanoids, they were big. They were like 8 inches or bigger, and by bigger I mean there's Tendril. He was 15 inches tall. You guys know me, I like big chunky pieces of plastic. I'm honestly shocked that this has not been revisited yet in toy form or cartoon form even. We know that Hasbro likes to bogart the licenses, but I feel like we're gonna get this eventually. Kevin Smith was at one point rumored to be writing a script for a reboot, but it never happened, which might be a good thing based on how the He-Man reboot was perceived, which I didn't hate it. I kind of liked it. I had some parts I was like, overall, it was pretty good. I didn't watch the second season, so that doesn't say much though. Anyway, these are surprisingly relatively affordable loose, but the big guys in their box, they get expensive. They can go anywhere from $100 to $1,000. Coming in at number 4, Air Raiders. The Air Raiders toy line came out in 1987 and was produced by Hasbro. This was a very unique series that combined miniature vehicles and figures in a futuristic aerial battle setting. The toys themselves were very small, but they had detailed aircraft and ground vehicles, along with action figures of the air raiders and their enemies, the groundhogs, which honestly sounds more like a gang that would be in Greece. Each vehicle is designed to be launched using a spring-loaded mechanism, adding a dynamic play aspect to the toy line. Despite its innovative concept and engaging design, the toy line had a very brief lifespan, and it's now remembered fondly by collectors for its creativity and imagination. Even sealed, these can be picked up really cheap today, whether it's at shows or on eBay, so these are not one that it's hard to go back and recollect if this was something that was a big part of your childhood. Coming in at number 3, Food Fighters. The Food Fighters toy line, not to be confused with the Foo Fighters, was released by Mattel in 1988 and featured anthropomorphic, did I say that right? Food characters that engaged in comical battles against each other. The toys were notable for their whimsical designs and humor, appealing to kids' imaginations. Although the line was very short-lived, it has since become a nostalgic favorite among collectors for its quirky concept and charm. Personally, I have very fond memories of the combat carton, which was the vehicle, which was literally an egg carton-shaped plastic box with a ketchup cannon. Think about that. Ketchup cannon, that's awesome. Because of the short run and I imagine relatively small print run, these are notoriously expensive to find nowadays, carded especially. If you've seen the new 9 to 5 Toys toy line, this kind of reminds me of that a lot. I have to imagine this was a major inspiration for that toy line. You also gotta wonder if the person who came up with Aqua Teen Hunger Force played with these toys as a kid. And yes, Aqua Teen is a guilty pleasure show of mine, with Frylock, Master Shake, Meatwad, and my personal favorite and doppelganger, Carl.
Check this out.
How the hell did you get so buff and ripped?
What are you doing on my lawn? Get out of here. Hey, I went to Shea Stadium back in '86. I threw batteries at John Kruk. That sounds about right. Hey Ma, happy Mother's Day. Coming in at number 2, Flintstone Kids. The Flintstone Kids toy line was released by Tyco in 1988 and was based on the animated series, which featured the younger version of the beloved characters from the Flintstones that was like, what, a 50s cartoon, 60s? This is like the new generation. The figures included Fred, Barney, Wilma, Betty, along with their children, Pebbles and Bam Bam, which makes you kind of ask the question, how are young Fred and Wilma having a young Pebbles? Babies having babies, man. Luckily, I was not this much of a deep thinker as a kid, so I still love this toy line. The toy line featured a bunch of fun accessories that came with each figure, as well as play sets that were inspired by prehistoric places in Bedrock, which was of course the town of the Flintstones. Despite appeal to fans of the original Flintstones series and the new animated adaptation, the toy line was sadly short-lived, but it remains a nostalgic favorite for collectors of 80s toys. Fun story about this, I completely forgot about this. I had all of these as a kid and I forgot they existed. So like 25 years later, I'm walking through a toy show, I think it was Steel City Con, and I saw the Schoolhouse playset and it was like memory unlocked. That Schoolhouse playset holds like a really special place in my heart. Big memory. I always wanted the Bedrock playset, but unfortunately, I quickly grew out of these when TMNT came out a short time later. Sadly, I do not see these that often at conventions, but there is a ton of eBay listings for them, and you can get the whole set for a surprisingly cheap price across multiple auctions. Coming in at number 1, Ghostbusters by Filmation. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, Ghostbusters, everyone knows Ghostbusters. Not these Ghostbusters. This was the Filmation Ghostbusters. These toys came out back in 1987. They were based on an animated series, which was named Ghostbusters, which was based on a live-action show from 1975. Fun story, the actual Ghostbusters name had to be licensed from Filmation, I assume Filmation, because they own the original Ghostbusters name, to make the 1984 movie. Even though that's all people know Ghostbusters of now, like Marshmallow Man and Slimer, this came first. The characters in the cartoon were actually the children of the characters from the live-action show, like, you know, in kayfabe. So we had Jake Kong Jr., Eddie Spencer Jr., those were the good guys, along with their partner and talking gorilla, Tracy the Monkey. Gorilla. Then, of course, there were various ghosts and villains. Each figure came with its own ghost-catching accessories, and it emphasized the show's campy and funny nature, too. Although the toy line and the show was overshadowed by the way more popular real Ghostbusters franchise, this has gained a bit of a cult following in recent years, probably because of people like me who really loved it. I never had any of these toys, but I absolutely loved the cartoon. In fact, I remember about 15, 20 years ago, I went out and bought the entire run on DVD and rewatched it, and it wasn't as good as I remembered. Isn't that a nostalgia kick in the butt? Anyway, these toys are stupid expensive now. At RetroCon this past fall, I saw the card backs, like the cardboard without the figure or blister, selling for $75 to $100. Like, that's insane. I very rarely see any of these at shows, which is a shame because on eBay, they super expensive. And if you want to see something really cool, check out the pictures of their Ghost Command playset and the car that they have. Super cool designs. I almost never see them for sale, but I did recently see them going or listed for over $1,000 each on eBay. I think they're probably still for sale because no one's paying that much for them, so I guess they're not worth it. But they're really awesome. They're ahead of their time. I absolutely love it. As somebody who is a modern toy dealer, seeing these old figures, especially the ones that have not been adapted into a modern line, really gets like my business wheels turning. In fact, I made a video about that right here, where I look at old properties that I would revisit and make a toy line of if I had the means, ability, artistic know-how, finances, all of that stuff. And you don't know? I don't know. But I do know this. You gotta get old. You don't have to grow up. Just be cool and stay nerdy. And bang, bang, bang. What is this? Where did this come from?